Last installment is the wedding feast, and it's going to be based on Matthew chapter 22, verses 1 to 14. So I've broken it down into a few sections. The first one being the preparation. We'll read Matthew chapter 22, verse 1. And Jesus answered and spoke to them again by parables and said, "The kingdom of heaven is like a certain king who arranged a marriage for his son. Again, he sent out other servants, saying, 'Tell those who are invited, see, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and fatted cattle are killed, and all things are ready. Come to the wedding.'" Now, if we look at the preparation, a lot of things are implied. The first thing is that just apart from the food, the banquet hall has been prepared that is going to be holding the people that are going to attend. We are told that the animals are slain, so that means the wedding feast has been prepared. So the only thing that was left was for the people who are going to be invited to come to the wedding. All they needed to do was accept the wedding invitation that had been offered them. For context's sake, we're going to read Ephesians chapter 5, verse 21. Be subject to no one other. Be subject to no one. Be subject to one another out of reverence for Christ. Wives, be subject to your husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church. His body his body and is himself its savior. If you read this verse, it's relating the relationship between husband and wife as the same as the one between Christ and the church. So for the purposes of this discussion, the wedding imagery here refers to the relationship between Jesus and the church. So we've just learned that everything has been prepared. All that's left to do is for people to be invited to the wedding so that they attend. Um, the next section is the king's invitation. Verse 3 of chapter 22 of Matthew 22, verse 1 to 40. Verse 3 says, "And sent out his servants to call those who were invited to the wedding. And they were not willing to come, but they made light of it and went their ways, one to his own farm, another to his business. And the rest seized his servants and treated them spitefully and killed them. But when the king heard about it, he was furious, and he sent out his armies, destroyed those murderers, and burned up their city." Now, if we look at a setting of a kingdom, we find that in a kingdom there is a ruler, and that ruler is the king. And whatever decrees and whatever laws and whatever requests that the king makes are to be met by the citizens or the inhabitants of that kingdom. So it is very uncommon to have a situation where a king sends an invite and people respond negatively to it. So what do we find out in the king's invitation? The people who have the most common appearance before a king are usually people of noble standing, people of royal blood, and people of high esteem. Basically, people who are deemed worthy to stand before the king. And so it stands to hold that these are the people to whom the invites were sent when the servants were sent to deliver those invites. But if we take a look, let us notice how people responded and scorned to these invitations. If we look at verse 5, "But they made light of it and went their ways, one to his own farm, another to his business, And the rest seized his servants, treated them spitefully, and killed them. But when the king heard about it, he was furious, and he sent out his armies, destroyed those murderers, and burned up their city. The first thing we notice is that the first group of people made light of the invitation. To them, of it was of no interest to them. It was, they took it lightly. They took it as if it's something of no value. The other group of people just ignored the invitation and went about their own business. Others went to seek uh, sustenance, be it in their businesses, in their own farms. But the reason they left is because they deemed their material richness better than attending the king's feast, the king's wedding feast. And then the third group of people, they are the ones that stopped, took a look at the servants and decided, no, but these guys are playing with us. So they persecuted the people who gave the message. And it got me thinking in relation to a situation where we have Christ and the church being referred to um, as one is husband, one is wife. So there's an intimate relationship there. And being called to the wedding banquet, being equivalent maybe to being um, given an option in quotes of coming to or accepting the invitation and going to the wedding, which would in this case be heaven. What we find now is people who were considered to be worthy of being in the company of the king, people who are considered to know what is required of the law, and people who are most likely, if anything, to have been the ones to be associated with the king. And those are the same people that are, in spite of all the things, they are ignoring this invitation. And it just got me thinking that many a time we find ourselves in a position of privilege. We find ourselves thinking we are worthy, we are the most righteous, yet when required to, we do not conform to all the laws, all the edicts, and all the requirements that we have to. Instead, we take our worth and hold on to it, but only for as long as it benefits us. Once we are required to put in action towards the king, towards God, we leave him and we go after our things that are of our personal gain. We leave it and we make light of it. It's not that deep. Is it really necessary? He'll understand things like that. In some cases, we even arm ourselves with these same laws and edicts. We arm ourselves with all this doctrine, and in a sense, we persecute others who we feel are not as righteous as us. So it's just a line of thought that I had. Verse 7 says, "But when the king heard about it, he was furious, and he sent out his armies, destroyed those murderers, and burned up their city." And it should come as no surprise that because you're in a kingdom under the rulership of a king, by, by that alone, if you go against what the king says, then there's a consequence to it. And for these people, the price of their ignorance was their destruction. Taking a look at the next section, those who actually came to the feast. If we look at verse 8, then he said to his servants, "The wedding is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy. Therefore, go into the highways, and as many as you find, invite to the wedding. So those servants went out into the highways and gathered together all whom they found, both bad and good, and the wedding hall was filled with guests. Um, for those who came to the feast, um, we find that after the rejection of the people who were seemingly worthy, the king decides to send out a second batch of invites. And as we have read, this batch of invites was to invite all that they meet. And according to the text, they went out and gathered as many as they could find. And at the beginning of the lesson, we started out with a group of people who, if we were to look at them from a point of privilege, from a point of merit, they would have seemed most worthy to stand before the king and most worthy to be in the king's presence, therefore most worthy to attend um, the king's wedding feast. But then we find now that the servants are sent to invite as many as they could find. Now, if we take a look at the verse again, it says, verse 9, um, therefore go into the highways and invite as many as you find. Invite and as many as you find, invite to the wedding. This is what they were told to do. Verse 10 says, so those servants went out into the highways and gathered together all whom they found, both bad and good. And the wedding hall was filled with guests. But it got me thinking, who then is the judge of who is bad and who is good? Because if one is sent to invite both bad and good, it means that there is a differentiating factor. When you go out to meet someone for the first time, there is no differentiation of bad and good. But then it then dawned to me that dwelling on that is also a bit useless, because the king did not send the servants to invite people based on their moral standing. No, he invited people to attend the wedding, which implied that people were now able, regardless of their moral standing, to attend this wedding. And the only person who could judge the worth of those people was the king. It goes then to stand that if righteousness was if righteousness was judged only from the point of view of actions and morality, then a lot of people would not be able to honestly make it into the gates of heaven. But because this is not a situation where by your acts you are saved. No, this is a situation where by righteousness you are saved. We find a situation where those that are not, those that were before seemingly unworthy to go before the king, are the ones that are now receiving the invites, and they're the ones that are now attending the what? They're the ones that are attending the wedding feast. But then there is a twist to it. By attending the wedding feast, it implies certain things. The next section is the wedding garment. But when the king came in to see the guests, he saw a man there who did not have on a wedding garment. So he said to him, friend, how did you come in here without a wedding garment? And he was speechless. Then the king said to the servants, bind him hand and foot, take him away and cast him into outer darkness. There will be weeping, there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. The implication now is that though the invitation has been opened to everyone, there is still one more step you should take before you attend the wedding. You cannot come as you are to the wedding. No, you need to be presentable before the king. You need to be approvable by the king. And so you need to work on yourself, get a wedding garment so that you can attend the what? The wedding feast. The whole point of this discussion of this topic is to bring to light that where we have salvation, we bring, yes, our merits and we bring our efforts, but apart from that, we also there's also other deciding factors, such as the grace of God, such as the how do I put this? Let me say, the miracle of taking one who is unworthy and putting him or her in a place where now they are allowed, they are clean, and they are righteous before the king. Hence, they deserve the merit of the wedding garment, that they adorn. What really is the benchmark we're supposed to reach is outside looking at ourselves and deeming ourselves righteous before other men, outside judging other people on behalf of God because we see ourselves as righteous, and outside having taken the merits of our supposed righteousness, and then because we see ourselves as righteous, we can bend the will of God to suit us, so that we only do what is required when we feel it is required. What above all that, what is required is just sincerity of heart in seeking the Lord, and He is the one who in the end determines whether or not one is worthy to attend the wedding feast. And in all that, keeping in mind that as we are all called of God, by responding to that call, we then merited the robe of righteousness, the garment of righteousness, or the wedding garment to attend the wedding. Because in the end, many are called, but few are chosen, according to verse 14. Inasmuch as we may feel we are in a better position because of where we think we are spiritually, that may not be the case. So let us continue to better ourselves, and let us continue in our humility in service to God. That way we can be rewarded with the wedding garment and attend the feast. That is all. That's my presentation to you guys. If there are any other contributions, now is the time.
Did you ask for contribution?
Yes. If there are any other contributions, now is the time.
Mine is not so much of a contribution. Maybe it's a question, and then contribution may come. Before I contribute, I want to thank you very much for a very focused and very interesting presentation. Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate it. There is something I apologize for being a bad student. I was distracted. I did something else. I think when you are talking about somebody, you are showing the portion where somebody who did not come with the garment. What happened to him? I believe it was a he. There was something like somebody was bundled out or something. Did I hear correct?
Yes,
Hello?
you heard, yes, you heard correctly.
Hello? Oh,
You
am I offline?
no, I can hear you. You heard correctly. It was verse 13. Then the king said to the servants, bind him hand and foot.
Can anyone
take
hear
him
me?
Yes, we can hear your voice, Elder Baruch.
Wow.
Yes, we can hear you.
Can anyone hear me? No? I can't hear anyone.
Oh, you can't hear anyone?
Okay, it seems like you can hear me, but I cannot hear anyone. I was asking about the person who did not go with the garment. What happened to him? I missed that portion of the slide.
Yes, verse 13, then the king said to the servants.
And now the problem is somebody is going to be responding and I'm the one who cannot hear. I don't know why.
That is exactly what is happening.
Maybe I should try to sign in again or something. And if what I saw or think I heard was true, that the person was bundled out, was it he thrown out of the wedding feast or something? If that is the case, I was going to ask what happened to grace, which we talked about at the end. Was that a very harsh way to deal with somebody who did not come wearing the appropriate garment? And is the garment here symbolic? If it is symbolic of what? This is the discussion I wanted to have, but unfortunately I cannot hear anything. So I request you allow me to sign out and try to sign back in again and see if that helps me.
Okay, I think we can just wait for him to come back so that we address his question.
But in the meantime, anyone else can
In the meantime, anyone else with a contribution or question? Isaac, do you have something to say?
Yes, I do. Mine is on the last part when you mentioned the fact that many are called and few are chosen. And before I used to think that statement meant that people are actually chosen. And I remember that from this story, everyone was chosen, but then everybody was called, but you were the one who chose. So it became like a thing where it seems as if you are chosen as if you're...
Isaac, are you speaking?
Yes, can you hear me? Can anyone else hear me?
No, I still cannot hear anything.
Yes, we can hear you, Isaac.
Sorry.
We can hear Isaac and we can hear Elder Baruch's voice. For Elder Baruch has a problem to listen.
Okay, as I was saying that from the story, from the parable, right? It speaks of the statement that says many are called, but then few are chosen. It sounds as if people are actually chosen, but the honest truth is we choose at the end of the day. So many people were called, but the man chose not to wear the wedding garment. So the same thing with we're Christians. God calls all of us, and the one who makes the decision is us. It's not like God has specifically picked you out and say you're going to be saved, in the sense that there's nothing else you could do but to be saved. But the honest truth is, we have all been called to be saved, and we are the ones who decide not to be saved.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much, Isaac. Thank you so much for that contribution. I don't know if there's anyone else who wants to make a contribution, but I'm just going to look at the participants and pick people. Angela, do you have any contribution?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Well, I don't really have a contribution, but I think I'll try to answer maybe the question that Professor Baruch was trying to ask when you were saying, like, does the wedding garment represent something? I think that's what his question was. And I think it does, because I think, like, since everyone, like as you were presenting before, you said everyone was invited, like whether good or bad, and everyone had the chance to attend the wedding. But then, like, this person who went there without the wedding garment, I think if you are to look at it in terms of our walk with Christ, I think it might mean maybe your faith in him, like, do you really believe in him? Because if you go to him and then you don't really believe, then it doesn't really make sense. Then I think there's also a verse that says, like, some people, like, I will not know them, I think something like that. So I think that's the same thing in this case, that maybe, like, the king did not know this, but like he didn't have the wedding garment. So if we're to apply it in our lives, you, like, Christ will not know you, like, you will not represent anything of him. So therefore, maybe that's why this person was taken away. And I think it's also going to show what's going to happen to us, like, in the end. Like, if we don't really know him, we all know what's going to happen. And I think that's what's being represented in this scenario.
Thank you so much, Angela. I don't know if Professor Baruch is absent.
I am back.
Yeah, welcome.
There is something that happened to this. I'm using Broadmarks, and once in a while, I don't know, you just have to switch off the, what is it called? The router from the electric socket and then switch it back on. They told me that sometimes it happens. So it's one of those things that happened. I just went and switched it off and switched it on again, and connection, and I got it. So I've had, I think I missed out a lot on very good contributions in answer to my question, but I had Angela. I want to thank her very much for this. Yeah. I don't know what else I missed, but I don't want us to have to go through the whole thing just because of me. I'm looking for something that Pastor sent to, probably to all of you, but it was not today, it was yesterday. Yeah, was it yesterday? And it was something from Hebrews 12:14, which was talking about pursue peace with all people and holiness, without which no one will see the Lord. Did anybody see this scripture? Anyone? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear.
Yeah, so
And you said Hebrews chapter 12, verse 14?
Yes, I think. So what I gather from what Angela was saying is that the garment was more symbolic. And here also I see some things we're being told that without this, you will not be able to do this. So I believe these are the lines along which, Angela, you are making your contribution, yes? And I don't know who else may have made the contribution before. So I shouldn't feel very bad that, you know, if it is a literal garment, and if you, those of you who are at the meeting we attended on Sunday, you know, we were talking about the dress, as the importance of dress, and how sometimes some people may lack the appropriate dress. And so I was thinking, oh, this is probably one of those people who just lacked the money to get the right garment, and then you are being thrown away out very brutally and mercilessly. But now I feel better if you tell me that actually this is not that literal dress you're thinking about, it's something more symbolic. Yeah?
Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Unfortunately, we don't have some of the details as to the conditions that that were around the people that were invited. I think it would have shed more light in addressing that particular individual who was then thrown out.
May I contribution for our program?
Yes, you may.
Okay, as according to the tradition of the Jews, when the wedding host invited the other peoples, they just already prepared the garment for the wedding guest. It means that they didn't want someone want the blame to didn't bring their garment for the wedding, and sometimes the guests are just join the wedding ceremony after just to finish their work, so they don't have any much time to just wear is maybe a good clothes for the adequate wedding clothes. That's why the wedding host already prepared the wedding garment for the guest. So it's actually, we have thought, what is the meaning of the wedding garment? It means it is complicated to just understand, but if we see there is the book of Revelation, chapter 19, verse 8, and to her it was granted to array in fine linen, clean and bright, for the fine linen is the righteous acts of the saint. Right? What is the meaning is the lion for the fine linen is the righteous acts of the saint. It means our clothes is indicate the representative of our righteousness. But actually, as we know, this is a parable of maybe a story, right? The wedding host is Jesus. Jesus invited the earth to enter the heaven, just like we just joined the wedding festival and the wedding event. And at the moment, if we just enter the heaven, we cannot go into by our righteous, our own work. So we should just receive the garment who the Jesus gives us for us. The garment that Jesus prepared for us, we covered our own righteousness, right? That's why the Apostle John mentioned one thing more. The book of Revelation, chapter 22, verse 14, says like that. I'm reading the New Living Translation. So blessed are those who wash their robes. They will be permitted to enter through the gate of the city and eat the fruit from the tree of life. So the blessed are those who wash their robes. How can the sinners wash our own maybe blame and our iniquities by ourselves? We can, but we can wash our garment by the blood of Jesus Christ, right? So it means when we just invited by Jesus Christ, we cannot go into the heaven by our own effort, but the garment what we wear from the Jesus Christ who just prepared for us. It is so it's important to understand about the wedding feast, the story of the wedding feast. Yes, that's it.
Oh, thank you. That helps a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you very much. I don't know if there's anyone else with anything to add, anything to contribute.
This just came across my mind, talking about the servants some of them were killed and some of them were messengers were sent back. I just it can be interpreted that okay, even we as Christians, God might send people to us, and not necessarily would we won't physically crucify them, but then how do we react to the people that God has sent to us? Do we basically, the way we scold people, the way we mock people, especially those that God has called? So the way we also respond and we treat the messengers of God or our leaders, or even not necessarily leader. A messenger can be anyone, can be someone we just meet today, or someone that maybe it's from a lower status that we might consider based on title or whatever it is. It can be even our kids, ordinary people, but then what we do, how we respond, we might end up even crucifying these messengers, not in the physical or the literal sense of crucifixion. So we might just fall into that category of the guest who rejected the messengers or even killed the messengers that the master had sent.